Praise Lord, everyone. Praise Lord, delegates to the Central California District Council. I'm hoping that you're enjoying yourself in your sessions. I'm hoping it's not going to take you away from it. And in any case, you can always hear it on replay. So my idea was not to take anyone away from hearing the message that God has at the council, or from hearing those who you would be able to support for your various churches. I'm just here at the dialysis center, waiting for my wife. I decided to go with her, even with my neck, because she's much more stable with me there than if I'm not there. So I decided to go. They have a comfortable chair for me to sit in, so I do that. But I have to do these sessions. It's like I can't pass a day without doing at least one. I got to do also multiple. It's just the more that's in me, the more that has to come out. So I apologize if it seems like I'm not trying to do this for vainglory. I'm not trying to do this because for people to like me. I'm doing this because I believe the Lord is really challenging me to continue to do His work regardless of my physical condition. And a sore neck does not mean I can't speak. So for today, at least for this particular moment, the Lord gave me something regarding the MAGA movement. And the main clue or key of being in MAGA, at least as far as I can tell, the main key in being in MAGA is not necessarily even following Donald Trump, but a lot of it is a wish for things gone by, a nostalgia. Maybe the nostalgia was real, maybe the nostalgia is not. But it feeds into those who are like a simpler time, who are like a time where things were put in their place, where some people, the Bible was more promoted. And I must admit, in many cases, the Bible was more promoted during those times. So it's not as though essentially they're altogether faulty in their thinking or their motivations. But I want to include this as part of what one may say is their motivation or their nostalgia for things gone by. See, I read about the children of Israel and how they had forsaken, or they had been delivered with a mighty hand out of the land of Egypt, from their taskmasters, from being worked to death, from threats of their own children being slaughtered. And then if you read Exodus 1, 2, and 3, you'll get a great picture. The whole idea was for them to work very hard, slave labor. They weren't going to be free. And eventually they'll die with no one to mourn them, and the next generation comes in and works. And that was the condition of the Israelites at that time. But Noah came. Now understand that it didn't go smoothly, because as long as the magicians in Pharaoh's court was able to duplicate some of the things, the Pharaoh would not let them go. And so when he asked Moses, why do you want them to leave? He said, well, we need a place where we can go and worship. A place where we can worship our God, pray to our God, really serve Him. And so Pharaoh said, well, you guys must be too lazy. You're thinking about going to serve. You must be too lazy. So we're going to have you make mortar without mud, without straw to hold the mortar together. So it actually got worse before it got better. But that's digressing. Going to the liberation of Israel from the Egyptians. And they went through the wilderness. And the people began to cry out and really murmur and complain. How dare you bring us out into this place? Whereas we're going to die. There's no water, there's no food, there's nothing. And you're going to bring us here to kill us. And the Lord, of course, brought water out of a rock. And then he put manna. But then they weren't satisfied with the manna. They got used to the manna. They got too used to the manna. It was many like, well, he wants something new. He wants something great. Then they started to think back. They thought back on their slave years. And it wasn't as if they were really thinking about the hardship they had dealt with while they were there. But they were thinking about the leeks and the garlics and all the good food they were able to consume. And essentially said, well, we're here, we just get this manna. Who wants this manna? And so, of course, the Lord got righteously very angry because he saved many of your lives. And he gave you food to eat and he gave you water to drink in a place that was hostile. All he needed for you to do was to follow him as he had shown all these miracles to the Egyptians. So you know that he could do it. So just follow him until he brought you to a place that you didn't have to work for. But they got mad and upset. And they began to murmur and complain. And they began to think about the good things that they had in Egypt. See, they didn't think about the food, the cucumbers and the things that they could just relish the mouth of. Because they didn't want the manna. Things had changed too much for them. But they were so quick to allow themselves back into slavery. And then when they had the people searched the land that they were going to, and they brought a discouraging report. Well, yeah, the land's it's flowing full of milk and honey, and it's very, what do you call it? It's very lush. But then there are people there like giants. They'll kill us. So they then try to make themselves a captain to bring them back under the Egyptian grindstone, that they would become once again slaves in hardship. The reason why the Lord worked for them, because they began to cry out, Lord, save us, save us. This is horrible. And they come into a position where the nostalgia for Egypt overwhelms the excitement of a new life. And I bring this to your point because I believe in many instances the reminiscing of those that are in MAGA, and I'm not just talking about white MAGA, I mean black MAGA too, Latino MAGA, that things may have been simpler, but things weren't good. Laws had to be passed for people to be able to walk together, to be able to get a certain position, to be able to own a particular piece of land, because they weren't allowed to own that land. And if you did, it was a lot of strings attached that you wouldn't be able to enjoy it. And you had to do a lot of things by hand. So, yes, you can go through and be able to say, well, I was able to walk my neighborhood without being threatened to be killed, and I was able to go into places without worry that my fruit was going to be spoiled, and all these seemingly wonderful things. We didn't have this influence of secular TV and movies and all this, and we should need to go back to a simpler life. But then when you're in a simpler life, you were praying to God that, Lord, help us. We're struggling so much. We're hurting. We're laboring from dawn until dusk. We get only this little bit of money, and we can't even afford where we are. I'm talking about all MAGA members, not only white, but black, Latino, everybody. And you get to say, well, it was because they didn't allow prayer in schools. And to be honest, I think that essentially covers part of it. But it was more of an air of Christianity than it was anything else. But even with Bibles in schools, there were rapes, there were murders, there was certainly people thieving around. The kids didn't care about the 10 Commandments being in the school. They didn't listen to it. They did whatever they wanted to do. Some of those that were in MAGA were part of it. Now maybe you came to your senses after you left college. But remember all those who had pledged fraternities and sororities? You had to go through all these, these rituals that essentially were actually dangerous and killed quite a few of you. Again, it wasn't all that good. And maybe because you were left to yourself and folks didn't make you be nice to people. They didn't make you give someone a chance, to give someone an opportunity other than those who you palled around with, those you felt comfortable with. And these are the type of things, essentially, that remind me of Israelites going back to Egypt and how they begin to inflate the advantages of slavery. They can eat. What I hear even today, people are touting the advantages of slavery. Well, at least when slaves, you got up at a certain time and went to sleep at a certain time, and the master gave you food. He gave you only enough food to survive, saints of God. There were rarely fat slaves. If you were fat, you didn't really work. So what were you? You were a burden. So either you got slim, or you got sold off, or you got killed. Trying to get back, trying to slim yourself. You were property. But that's not remembered. That's not remembered. What I'm asking everyone to do, whether you're MAGA or not, I want you to take an honest assessment of your past. Because it says, make America great again, meaning that there was a time where America was great. And there was a time that America, it was stood alone. But you were being pushed by the Soviet Union. And many people didn't like you because of your attitude. You thought you were better than everybody else because you were American. Because you came in like the cavalry and saved Europe from the excesses of Nazi Germany and the and the savagery of Imperial Japan, or the machinations of Mussolini's Italy. You were in this position, and but essentially, yes, it may have been good for some. Some of you may have even had a better, a better way of living. But it was based upon, you had to toe the line, follow everything that was being said. And people in church did not act like people that are supposed to be in church. They acted like people that were from the outside. They were cruel. They were mean. They participated in lynchings and beatings. Their life was not easy, whether it was rural or urban. Only very few became rich. And maybe you want the way to be rich, but it wasn't given to very many people, only to a select few. And that, let's say you were newly rich. Those that had come before you, they despised you. They despised your lack of class. So, essentially, with all is said and done, maybe America was great then. But how were you living during that time? Well, it was certainly better than living here and being afraid of China and being afraid of. Are you really afraid of China? Are you really afraid of China gobbling up every single parcel of land here in the United States? Maybe it's because we had forgot our ways of being able to do righteous business, that we allowed ourselves to be lulled into sleep, into complacency, whereas the other countries of this world began gearing up their economical systems. And they began to produce products not only cheaper, but of better quality. You ever wonder why we don't have TVs anymore? You don't see the Made in America TV? Because the American TVs were high priced and they fell apart for the simple reason that they can be made again. And so therefore, the companies who made the TVs made huge profits. Japan could make them much cheaper. Then came South Korea, could make them much cheaper. And they had good deal of quality in the TVs. So, because of what we were trying to elevate profit over quality, now we have the Japanese and the South Koreans cornering the TV market in other areas as well, other areas of technology. But my main focus here is, when you begin to think of the past, don't think of it nostalgically. Think of it in reality. And especially for those who were not part of the majority, you were never accepted. Ever. You were thought of as chattel. You were thought of as inferior. Only thing that you were great in was athletics, which then fed into the whole idea of big buck. And athletics compensated for your lack of mental capacity. And that's what, and so you were never going to be any better than who you were, because society and their meetings were going to keep you down. So don't do what the Israelites did and block your way to enter the kingdom, because that's exactly what took place. That those who murmured, those who complained, those who wanted to go back to Egypt, they could have made it to the wilderness, but they all died in the wilderness. And their sons and daughters who they thought would be captured as a prey by the various nations in Canaan. Those are the ones who made it to the promised land and eventually possessed it. So they're the ones, they didn't have to have that nostalgia with them. That was also a big thing too. They didn't have that nostalgia of Egypt. And therefore, they were able to free themselves and to make it to the promised land. If you're going to make it to any promised land, whatever you think of you want to have as in America or anywhere else, beware of the nostalgia, because it will blind you to the truth. Okay? May God bless you. May He keep you. God bless you.